We have some trespassing geese, obviously baby geese, daddy goose, I guess. It is completely dark out here right now. I don't even have any illumination. With naked eye, you literally can't tell these geese are here. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Mike, and today we are going to be going over this optic that you see right here on the rifle in front of me. As you probably guessed, it is the Sightmark Wraith Mini 2-16 thermal scope. So it looks very similar to their night vision scope. I think it actually uses the same body, in fact, but this one sees in thermal. So what does that mean for new folks here? Well, thermal sees heat signature, so it doesn't see visible light the way that your eye sees it, my eye sees it. It sees a heat spectrum. So basically, if something is warmer than the object that is next to it, or vice versa, they will contrast as you see it through the thermal optic, letting you know what you're looking at. So the big deal on this one right up front is the price point on this one. So street price, this thing's coming in right at the $2,000 price point, which makes it affordable for thermal optics. So we've done many thermal optics here, reviews rather, on the channel. This is by far and away the least expensive. It's not cheap, but the least expensive one that we've brought to you. And I think it performs very well. And I think there's a lot of people that this could open the barrier to entry, if you will, into thermal optics for. Now, this video is going to be a little different than what we typically do. First off, it is a Mug Club episode, so what we're going to do here, of course, is do the review here on YouTube, Rumble, etc. Then we're going to head over to Mug Club and we're going to discuss some things that may help people out, potential buyers. So we're going to talk about the difference between thermal, night vision, and different ways to use both systems, pros and cons of each, which one you should go for, etc. in your particular application. And if you guys are looking for Mug Club and you guys don't know what it is, or rather you don't know what it is, it's a place where we can create exclusive content for members only. It's myself, Steven Crowder, Brian Callen, Nick DiPaolo, other folks over there creating as well. There should be a code here on your screen that will get you guys a free month over there at mrgunsandgear.com/mugclub. And that's one difference between this video and a lot of the reviews we do. And then additionally, I'm going to be kind of cutting throughout the review to some footage because I have tons of footage with this scope, which leads me to my next point, that it can record both audio and video. And most of the footage I actually recorded for this video was recorded during the day. Generally speaking, at night you're going to get better contrast, but I have to be able to see something, right, to be able to start recording it, and that was kind of my cue to get this thing out and start recording. I should note that anything that we're going to be showing you, like if I have it oriented on my dog or on a person, it is not mounted on the rifle when we're actually doing that. It was taken off. But we're going to cut throughout the video to several different points and just kind of let you guys hear me explaining what I'm looking at, the distances and things like that. And one thing I should point out is that I don't know if this is true only for Macs, but on Macs, like if you guys have MacBooks or something like that, you have to actually convert the file from what it comes off of on the SD card, so it's kind of annoying. So I don't think I'm going to roll in all of my footage, but we'll roll in enough to let you guys know the capabilities of this optic for sure. So let's kind of walk you through the actual body itself. Obviously back here we have this rear flip cap. It also comes with a rubber eyepiece. Now that rubber eyepiece allows a couple things. Number one, it allows you to get a consistent sight picture, if you will, as you look through it. Now with thermals, sight picture isn't really that big of a deal like it is with regular scopes because of course you're just looking at an LED screen. The LED screen will put the dimensions here of the actual display, but it's pretty good. And I will tell you, versus what you guys are seeing here on your screens when I roll in footage, unfortunately for you, but fortunately for the person who owns the actual thermal, is that the image that we see here is actually quite a bit better than what you guys are actually seeing. That has to do with a few things. That has to do with the file conversion process, with the conversion that goes on when you upload to YouTube and Rumble, etc. But just know that what you're seeing here on your screen as I roll images in is actually better when you actually look at the screen here in real life. But we do have a cap on the rear. It also comes with a cap on the front. Our menu is insanely simple. It's honestly one of the biggest pros of this scope, in my opinion. So we have obviously our forward back button, left and right button, and then the power button is also the menu button and things like that. So in terms of actually using the menu, which we will do here in a second, it's probably the easiest thermal I've used to date, which is important because, again, I think this scope is something that's going to be used by a lot of new folks getting into it. So you don't want something that's a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, like a lot of thermals are, and this is not that for sure.
Colt's probably about 45 yards away right now. And he's barking at those folks right there. He is not having any of that bullshit.
Before continuing on, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is American Hartford Gold. Anybody who's watched the channel knows that I am not a huge fan of fiat currency, and that is an understatement. There's a plethora of reasons why that might be. Constant inflation, banks failing, the government threatening to bring about a digital currency. And as firearms owners know, you cannot count on the government for your protection. Our friends at American Hartford Gold can help you diversify your portfolio from just fiat-based currency to physical gold and silver, so that way you diversify that risk across the board. American Hartford Gold has thousands of 5-star ratings and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. Plus, they support content like this, which certainly is not the case with all companies, as many of you know. When you reach out to them now, they will give you up to $5,000 in free gold or silver. And you can let them know that I sent you by texting code GEAR to the number here on your screen, or giving them a call at 866-856-2097. Again, that is 866-856-2097, or text GEAR to 65532. Now back to the video. Continuing up front, we do have this focus ring here, which allows you to, as the name would indicate, adjust the focus of it. So what I would do, like after this review, what I'm going to do is actually mark on there where like the infinite focus is, so that way you have a quick reference point, and that's about where it is right there. And then after that, if you need to get up close, you know, within 25 yards or something like that, you can move the focus as needed. But the vast majority of the actual shooting you're going to do, or the scanning that you're going to do, you're going to want to have it on that infinity setting, so that way it's as clear as possible out, and you can scan and pick different things up in the environment. Over here on the right side of the optic, we have a couple things going on, and of course these things are O-ring sealed, but we have this piece here which allows you to use battery packs. And I think that's super important. The majority of time that we've been using this, we've actually been using an external battery pack and just duct taped it down right here on the rail. You guys can see there's some paint removed from this rail. That's why. So we've been doing it that way. Of course, it also has two CR123As on the left side of the optic that we will get to here in just a second that can power it. And then we also have this piece, if you pull that off, and that will expose your SD card, your mini SD card, which again allows you to record on there both voice and audio. Now let's flip it on over here to the other side and discuss this piece here, because this is our battery pack. So you can just push in right here on that, and that exposes the two CR123As. If you guys want to use rechargeable CR123As, you can. I would imagine that probably voids the warranty, but I've done it and it works. But just know that it probably is not recommended by the folks over there at Sightmark. But a better way to do that, in my opinion, is if you want that rechargeable capability, is just use a battery pack. Just use a battery pack, it works fine, and you won't have to worry about it. But this is going to be one of the cons of the optic, in my opinion, is this piece right here, the battery pack portion. So one thing that happened several times during the review, and honestly guys, I'm rougher with my stuff than most of you guys will ever be with yours, simply because it's just part of the testing that we do here on the channel. So when I took this rifle out for the first time, I just kind of threw it on the ground, because that's what I do when I get out to the range. And as soon as I did that, it wasn't hard. Like, I wasn't throwing it. I was just like, you know, here it is in my hand, throw it over. And immediately that happened. That is not a good thing. That's not what you want to happen. And then additionally, when the rifle was just sitting right before pulling it out to do this video, I pulled it out of my stack of rifles in my office, and it was open. So it had popped open. So I wish there was some sort of like retention device. Obviously it's under spring tension. It won't just come open, but just touching that, as you guys see there, will pop it open. And out in the field or something like that, that's suboptimal for sure. Again, if you're using a battery pack, it's not an issue at all, because the battery pack will be powering it. But it's just a little bit too easy, in my opinion, to pop open. If there was a different type of system that would close it off, I think that definitely would be a pro, if you will, if they ever make like a version 2 of this.
It's about 90 degrees out here and quite sunny, so the ground out there is hot, but interesting to see how that machine looks versus the guy there who's standing behind the tree. Additionally, you can see the ground that they're digging up, much cooler. Hasn't been heated by the sun. And black hot in this particular scenario probably doesn't give you quite as many details, just due to all the ambient temperature.
And speaking of batteries, if you're using those two CR123As, the manual says you're going to get 4 hours of runtime. We have consistently, with the batteries that we're using here, which are Energizers, been getting right around 5 hours. That may depending on which actual batteries you're using, but we've been getting better than what's advertised in terms of actual battery life. So moving on down to our mount here, it is not QD. So that's one of the things that you give up for the price point on the rifle. It does have this knob here, and I believe 65 inch-pounds is what they recommend in the manual. Don't quote me on that. I'll edit it if it's not true. But unfortunately, it is not quick detach. A lot of guys like that quick detach feature, so that way you can just take it on and off your rifle and scan without having to point your rifle in various directions. That's really going to depend on what you guys are into in your environment. But one thing I noticed, so again, just kind of if they're going to make a Gen 2, and I don't know if they will or not, if it's very close in terms of the dimensions to an ACOG mount. So there's a lot of different QD ACOG mounts out there on the market, and right now for this particular optic, the only one I know of that works with this, the company that makes one for it, is American Defense Manufacturing. I think it's like $100. So it's not a huge price point difference, but if you just move it just a touch, it would be very close to being ACOG mount compatible. So if you were going to make a Gen 2 Sightmark, that would be a recommendation from me. But again, you can take it off and put it back on. I should note there are, I believe, 9 reticles in the actual optic itself, and you can actually zero it for 5 different guns, take it off and put it back on, and it has maintained 0 throughout the time we've been using it. This one's been taken on and off this particular rifle 3 times. Every time it maintains 0, putting it back on. I, of course, have little pencil marks as to where I mount it on my rail, so that way it's consistent every time, but it has absolutely maintained 0. Now let's actually go through what you're actually seeing when you're using the optic. To power it up, we're pressing and holding the power button. It flashes Sightmark there real quick, as you guys can see. And then I have it, I believe, right now set to white hot. And to actually record, basically we're going to press right on the right arrow button and it will start recording. Now I can't hold it all that steady like this, so I'm going to get down and keep it a little bit more steady. I'm going to work through, again, the focus, as you guys can see here, going in and out of focus right about... maybe there is your best focus for infinity. Now again, it is daylight as of when we're filming this. It's also very humid, which affects what you guys are seeing. And that is what we're seeing out there. That little dock is probably, from this particular position, is probably about 400 to 500 yards out. So that is quite far out. And of course we have it in the 2 magnification. Now let's talk about magnification for digital optics. So with a thermal like this, you can zoom in 8 times, giving you 16x magnification. But for practical shooting, particularly if we're talking about like coyotes, hogs, something like that, you're really not going to zoom in beyond 6, in my opinion. It just, because what you're doing is you're magnifying pixels. So they're just going to pixelate, and it's not a whole lot of use. Up to 4 or 6 it can be if you're trying to like positively identify whether something is a hog or is a deer or something like that. But beyond 6, with this resolution and this particular optic, I really don't think you get a lot of advantage.
He's about 150-ish, maybe 200 yards away.
on that. Your mileage may vary, but we will zoom in here and let you guys see what I'm talking about. So the actual details that you see there don't change. You just magnify the pixelated details that you guys were just looking at. But as you can see there on 2X, we have pretty good situational awareness all around. Nothing too crazy. Do I see any animals around? I think we got a couple geese over there that you guys can be able to see. Geese are horrible animals to use as an example because, of course, they have all that insulation. But you can't see that goose right there. And you definitely can tell it's a goose. And you guys can see there the way just kind of everything looks with this color palette. Now, speaking of that, if you want to change that out and change a lot of different things out or go into zeroing, you can work through the menu. Moving on to color palettes, let's work through those ones here real quick. So we have our white hot that you guys are seeing right now. Should go to black hot, or yep, black hot next. Then we're going to go through the colors. So it has this sort of rainbowy one here. Honestly, guys, I'm not sure what you'd use that for. Then we should have a night vision type one here. I say night vision. It's absolutely not night vision, to be clear. Just a lot of people, that's what they associate that green color palette with. And there definitely are situations I could think that you might want to use that. And then back to another rainbow one that is slightly different, and then back to white hot. For me, I've been using thermals for a long time. Basically, my opinion, my use, my personal preference, I always use white hot or black hot, just depending on the actual conditions. So that black dot out there is a vehicle. That is about 1,100 yards away. I'm actually kind of surprised it picks up that easily. Pleasant surprise on that one. Work through different color palettes there. That boat's probably right now about 350 yards away. And obviously moving out beyond that, you guys get an idea of what everything looks like there. At this point in the video, hopefully you guys have a pretty good idea of what you can expect in terms of what you can actually see, what you can't see. A few things I can't show you guys with the recording there on the screen is going to be, you can go in there and change your contrast, you can change your brightness, you can pick different reticles like we talked about. You can zero for 5 different guns. One thing that's cool about zeroing any type of digital optic, whether it be thermal or night vision, is that it's generally speaking much easier to do than a traditional rifle scope. So you can actually just basically take your shot, see your shot, and then digitally move your reticle right over to it, and it's zeroed. So that's about as easy as it gets. I know you can do that with a conventional scope, but I'm telling you, it's easier on a digital scope. So there is that. This thing is rifle rated up to 308. So basically anything that you're going to want to take game in North America with in terms of caliber, it should be able to handle just fine on that regard. Price point, I believe we already talked about that, but $1,999. Now, compared to some of my other thermals, no doubt about it, this is not as good. And that has to do with, in terms of what you see, rather, the image. And that has to do with just that resolution, like we talked about. This one here has that 384 by 288. My higher end ones, if you will, basically double that in terms of pixels. So you're looking at like a 640 by 480, and you definitely do get better resolution. Now, how does that actually impact you as the end user? Well, certain things, like if you're out looking across the lake like we were just doing there, and there was, you know, a person on a paddleboard or whatever the case may be, in terms of being able to engage them, it really doesn't change all that much. Like we're talking about, depending on conditions, we're talking about engagement distances with this. Generally speaking, coyotes, hogs, etc., deer, most conditions you'll be able to easily engage them out to 150, 200 yards. Depending on how experienced you are behind thermals, that may extend a little bit more. And the same really is going to be true with that higher resolution one. If you have like a 640 by 480, those numbers really aren't going to change all that much. The big difference is going to be in the contrast. So for example, like if you're looking across the lake and you're looking in the trees and you're trying to see something that the details that are in there that are not like super temperature different, it really does show up in terms of details a little bit better with those higher end thermals. That really is kind of what you're giving up, not so much engagement distances rather, in my opinion. And just a couple things to touch on before we close the video out. Sightmark did send it out for this review, but that was at my request because these came out a few months ago and everyone was beating me up to get a review up and what I thought of it. So yeah, they did send it out, but they don't get to see this video before you. They don't get to dictate anything I said. Obviously, we've had some improves. One other one that we want to add on there is that the front lens cap is gone, as you guys can see. We lost that just to normal use as we were testing out the optics. So maybe improving the front lens cap secure method, if you will, securing method might be something that we want to look at. But one big pro of it that we didn't touch on is going to be the size. I think it's like 6.5 inches long and it's 19 ounces. So for a thermal that gives you the capabilities that this thing has, the weight really is good. It has that aluminum housing on there, so it's not polymer. It doesn't feel chintzy at all. And honestly, I think it is a great thermal for someone looking to get into thermal. So, you know, it may be a budget thermal, but the difference between a thermal and not having a thermal is, you know, night and day. Obviously, it is literally like buying a superpower. You can see in virtually all conditions and things that your human eye could never detect, this thing will detect. So it definitely is very cool. Of course, there'll be a link down below if you guys are looking to pick one up. Additionally, if you guys are new here and you like this type of video, go ahead and subscribe. We do these videos fairly often. Additionally, if you have subscribed, just double check that because YouTube does what they do. And if you guys are subscribed, you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week, then there is an algorithm censoring your eyes from my content. Way to beat that is to sign up for the email at the website here on your screen. It goes out once a month and it has all of the videos since the previous month's email went out. And that way it will prevent you from being censored from my content because it goes straight from me to you. Additionally, if this thing goes on sale, any of the stuff that we talk about goes on sale, this rifle, the ammo, optics, lights, lasers, etc., all those things, it will be in my daily deals email. As the name indicates, it goes out daily. And if it's in the email, it's the cheapest I know of anywhere on the internet because I've done the price comparisons for you. So that way it saves you some time and hopefully some money. Additionally, there's always a good meme in there that I know most of you guys appreciate. And honestly, I think there's people that follow just for the memes. But anyway, that is all I have for you. Piss off, YouTube.